This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Thanks, everybody, for downloading the latest edition of Doc and Jock. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Joining me, as always, Adam, the Jock Strozinski. Man, cuz you put me through the ringer today. I like it. You had me on deadline. I thought it was real fun being at OTAs and now recording this podcast. What's up with you, my friend?
I love it. We just come in and we have to MacGyver stuff, and somehow we figure it out and we get it all to work. It's absolutely crazy. I'm excited to do this show. So, a ton of news coming out of Lions OTA. You went there, you witnessed it. Some news being made on the internet with Dan Orlovsky. A lot to talk about today.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that I think where the stage we are in the season is wondering and evaluating what the Detroit Lions actually have. And the guy, unfortunately, that's taken the brunt of the arrows has been Jared Goff. And still today, even on Thursday, as we record this, Jared Goff is the big topic. Ben Johnson, the OC, talked about today what he wants to accomplish with Jared Goff. But I sense a lingering lack of confidence across the board, nationally and locally as well. But Dan Orlovsky, to set the stage, put a list out and left Jared Goff off of it, does not know or does not believe yet that the Lions can win with Jared Goff, has a list of players that teams can build around that can win, including Kirk Cousins. The name that I think upset many people was Tua. How are you going to put Tua on the list as being a quarterback a team can win with, not because of, and then omit Jared Goff? So I thought it was disrespectful. I don't find it to be motivation in any way, shape, or form. I just thought it was disrespectful because I think firmly, based off of Dan Orlovsky's list, you could, if you build around Jared Goff, and we were talking about this before even we started recording, if you put pieces together, a run game, an offensive line, wide receivers, if you put some stuff together, there's a chance you could win some games. But now, again, it goes back to, can you win the ultimate prize with Jared Goff? Probably not. But I don't think you'd leave him off a list and say you can't win football games. I think you can win football games if you build correctly. You just can't count on Jared Goff to win you the game.
I think this is where Dan Orlovsky is coming from. And look, I'm gonna take the other side on this. I don't know what you do with Jared Goff. I don't know where he fits. I don't necessarily know if you can win with him. If you go back and you look at last season with Jared Goff, in the games that they won, the man didn't throw for 300 yards. He hardly did anything. I feel like this team won those games in spite of Jared Goff. I feel like this team won those football games because of other guys that were around that did bigger things. I felt like in the games against Minnesota, the games against Arizona, the games against Green Bay, obviously Green Bay not playing for anything, Arizona, complete and utter dysfunction at this point in the season last year. And the game against Minnesota was a game that they should have won in early October. They end up coming back and making it right in December. And in that game, I don't think Jared Goff was anything special, was anything spectacular. So I feel like with Dan Orlovsky's observation, what Dan Orlovsky's basically saying is the Detroit Lions will win in spite of Jared Goff. It doesn't necessarily matter if Jared Goff is playing or not. There are enough pieces on this team to where they'll get a victory. And I think that's what Jared Goff is. At this point in his career, you're not tagging Jared Goff as a guy to help you win games. You're tagging Jared Goff as a guy to basically be a bridge to whomever that next quarterback is. I feel like the worst part for the Detroit Lions is this upcoming season, I think they've got enough pieces now around Jared Goff where Goff might look a little bit more special, where Jared Goff might look more like an average quarterback. That's what I mean by look a little bit more special. I think he's going to have some games because now he's got some playmakers who can get some separation, get down the field. He's going to have a couple games where he's going to throw for over 300 yards. He's going to hit a big play here or there down the field. And when I say big play, I mean 25 yards or more. And I know we all question Jared Goff's arm strength, but it's one of those things where I don't know if with Jared Goff, you are planning for the future with him. And I think for the Lions, the unfortunate thing is the way last season ended, it set up perfectly for you to be able to go and draft a quarterback. Now, the way the draft fell, there were no quarterbacks for you to draft. This upcoming draft looks like there's going to be more quarterbacks, or at least more special quarterbacks at the very, very top of this draft. We'll see how it all plays out, because going into this season, we thought there were going to be a couple of quarterbacks that they could pick. Obviously, nobody really special. You end up with the defensive end, which helps out tremendously, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But I don't think Jared Goff is a guy that you're building your future around. I think Jared Goff is a Band-Aid on a bullet wound, and you're looking for that next guy. And I think that's what Dan Orlovsky was trying to say. I don't think Jared Goff is a guy that anybody is counting on to come in and win you a football game. You're just having Jared Goff come in, and you're like, just don't blow this game for us. Please don't blow this game for us. And that's what Jared Goff is at this stage in his career. And at this point with the Lions, that is what he is. A don't blow this game for us kind of guy.
Absolutely. I agree. But when you say you put the list out, you remember he listed. Now, I agree with his other list where he says these are the quarterbacks that can win you games, meaning that these are the quarterbacks that can lift an organization maybe that does not have a lot of talent, the likes of a Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and the likes, the elite. Okay, nobody's going to argue that Jared Goff is elite. Nobody. You watch him, he doesn't have the necessary arm strength to consistently toss it deep. You need receivers to get some separation. The thing that he wants to get better at is potentially fitting in the throws into tight windows, taking a little bit of a chance, taking a little bit more risk. And they obviously sacrificed some draft capital to move up to get moved up 20 spots to get Jamison Williams, who has speed that can make it more comfortable for other players to get open, will add pieces to this offense. With that said, I think there's an opportunity for Jared Goff to have some success, to throw the ball deep, to use what he does well. And that's involving play action, making reads, short dump off passes. So that means Jared Goff basically a little bit better than a game manager, but not somebody you need to be throwing the ball 40 to 45 times. In that range, I think the best plan for the Lions involving Goff means just having him really manage games, limit turnovers, which have plagued him in the past, get the ball out quickly, and move with a little bit of tempo in regards to getting in and out of the huddle. With that, when you put the defense on its heels and then you set up the play action, this is where our next talk will be as well. The keys really for Jared Goff to be successful involves the run game, involves having DeAndre Swift, Jamal Williams, Craig Reynolds, potentially Jamar Jefferson. Having that run game actually succeed makes things tremendously better. Remember, you saw it on film. We saw the worst of Jared Goff when you don't have an offense, which everybody knew. I mean, I told Brad Holmes directly, how can you fairly judge Jared Goff when you give him that crew of receivers? And of course, they gave the company answer and said, oh, we believe in this and believe in that. And then halfway through the year, you go out and you get Josh Reynolds. So obviously you knew your receivers weren't that good. Now, at the very least, I think
forget about trading for Trinity Benson.
Yeah. Well, if you read my observations today, Trinity's, they said that he was viewed as a developmental player. He's been looking good at OTAs. Now, of course, he's playing against Lions secondary, but he's been making receptions. He's a developmental player. Maybe in this system might be more conducive for the passing game. But I want to say this. I think at the very least, this 2022 year, over the course of 17 games, the Lions will fairly be able to judge Jared Goff. Can you win 8 games with this roster? If everybody stays healthy, this is an 8-win football team with a run game, a healthy offensive line, 3 to 4 solid weapons on offense. You can't get that much better in the league because of the salary cap. This is what you get. So if he gets 8 wins, you can start to really judge what he can do. And you saw on film, you saw it when Josh Reynolds got there, his comfort level improved. Ben Johnson, now being the OC, was taking over a little bit more of the offense. You saw a better Jared Goff. You have to give him credit for that. He was moving the football, zinging it around, showing a little bit of toughness. I think you can see that. And I'm not sure why Dan Orlovsky did not put him on the list. I view it as disrespect. And I understand your point of view, but I just think that Jared Goff deserved to be on that list. I don't think I'm okay with him being known as a tier 3, tier 4 quarterback, but when you make lists and you say quarterbacks you can win with. How are you not sure? You've seen it. And Dan Orlovsky should have seen it on film. You saw 4 or 5 games where Jared Goff had a stretch where he could pass the ball and move things when the pieces were there. And I think with better pieces, Jared Goff has a chance to take a step forward. And remember, he's still only 27 years old, still could be developing with a coordinator that maybe understands his skill set a little bit better than Anthony Lynn did.
Well, what about this? So you said you feel like the way this team is currently constructed, obviously we're going to throw health out the window because we're going to say the way the team is put together now, you put them on the field, they're going to win 8 games no matter what, right? Obviously health will have an impact on that, but we're not talking about health right now. We're just talking about the way the team is built at this moment. You said they can win 8 games with Jared Goff. Is that good enough, though? Because in my estimation, if your quarterback is good enough to get you 8 wins, it's still not good enough. It's nowhere near good enough at this point. I need a quarterback to come in here, and I need to help solidify 10-win seasons. You have to remember, you still have Aaron Rodgers in this division. And I know it's just for a limited time because Aaron Rodgers, I feel like, maybe one and done this season. He's on his way out. But that being said, you've got Chicago who's looking to get better. You've got Minnesota who's still trying to figure things out. So you have to be able to put 10 wins a season together just to be able to get into the playoffs and be able to do some damage. I don't feel like it's safe enough to say, yeah, my quarterback's good enough to get us 8 wins and we can kind of build from there. No. In my estimation, you have to go out and you have to find a quarterback who's going to help you win 10 games or more. You need that. I'm not saying he has to necessarily be elite. I think we would all love an elite quarterback. All right? That's on Brad Holmes to get that figured out. But what you can do is you can get a quarterback who is that second tier, maybe a notch above what Matt Stafford was, or maybe even what Matt Stafford was here. Obviously, this team, I feel like, has more talent all the way around it compared to what Matt Stafford had to deal with. Go get that quarterback and get into the playoffs and then make some noise. I don't feel like Jared Goff is a good enough quarterback. And yeah, I understand he's young, but I don't feel like he's a good enough quarterback to help get you to the promised land, get you to where you want to go. And we all want to just end up in the playoffs. That's what we want. I don't think he's good enough to get you there. And I think that's why Dan Orlovsky places him where he places him. And I totally get what you're saying, right? You give him some more pieces, you insulate him a little bit, you give him an offense that he feels comfortable running, and just kind of watch the numbers creep up, watch the wins come in. It should all work itself out. I don't think he's a very good quarterback, though. And that's my big issue.
Yeah, but also the reason why I also include 8 wins is you got to build a defense, and that defense is young and still very unproven. So it's not going to behoove Jared Goff or the Lions to be down 14-0. Or remember, too, cuz the game against the Ravens had an opportunity to close it out late. Didn't make the correct calls. Aaron Glenn played way too passive. So what I'm saying is there are other factors besides just Jared Goff's skills that would preclude the Lions from winning a bunch more games. What Jared Goff, basically the question is, and what you're trying to allude to is, how many games can Jared Goff help you win himself? And I think the average quarterback, maybe 5 to 6, and Jared Goff would be in that 3 to 4 range, just under that. But he can help you. He can help you. And when you also factor in the defense, if you build it correctly to be more attacking, to have a young secondary that can make some stops in critical moments, that's what will take you, in my opinion, from 8 to 11, 12, is having a defense that's a little bit more talented, and Jared Goff can lead you. But you and I are in lockstep. Bottom line, do we see Jared Goff leading this team to the promised land? No, only in a perfect case scenario where you build a top 5 defense, top 5 offense, everybody stays healthy, and the universe conspires together, and Jared Goff is asked to make like 1 or 2 throws in key moments, and that's it. You're not going to have where you saw in the playoffs last year where it was Josh Allen v. Patrick Mahomes going toe-to-toe, touchdown for touchdown, electrifying the entire world, the audience that tuned in to watch it. That's not Jared Goff. You need him to be more Trent Dilfer, just dump it off, just kind of be ultra safe and handle your business. So it's not going to win you style points in any way. But what also is going to aid Jared Goff and what he should be pining for is DeAndre Swift taking the next step, and Deuce Staley. Guys, pay attention. The media sessions are all posted on YouTube. The Detroit Lions do a good job of filming everything. Deuce Staley kind of came out on Thursday and said, I've talked to DeAndre about trying to play through a little bit more injuries, trying to get out there a little bit more. because the best ability is availability. And Deuce Staley is a hard-nosed football coach. And he said, hey, I've had talks with DeAndre. We've seen him work out. We want him to see him out there on the football field. And that is key. That is something that I think can be a weapon, an offensive weapon in the pass game. Now, it led to some debate because, at All Lions, we did a story and just kind of basically said, and it goes into the debate that many people have in football, which is always interesting to get your sense of it, is this whole two-back system. See, I am of the opinion that if you pick the right guy, if the Lions would have figured out that Jonathan Taylor was elite and had him on the roster, you don't have to worry about another running back. But everybody bought into the cornbread, bought into you can't have one running back anymore because they break down and get hurt. Well, DeAndre Swift falls into that category. Kind of a player that has been spelled by Jamal Williams, has been given up some reps to Craig Reynolds and to Jamar Jefferson. But bottom line, he is going to split reps with Jamal Williams. And I understand the philosophy, but in my mind, DeAndre Swift is the home run threat. So what you need to do is you need to ratchet up his targets, ratchet up his productivity where he's getting 80% of the targets and maybe not so many of the runs, but he needs to be a factor in the passing game, get him to be more explosive, get him to stay out on the football field. I think a key to the offense that not many people are talking about is DeAndre Swift. If he can take that step in his career to be more reliable, to be that person that Jared Goff can count on as a safety valve, look out, because then that opens things up for Hockenson, for the other receivers, for Amon-Ra St. Brown. And remember, too, that opening series against the Rams was spectacular with DeAndre Swift just blowing by people. So I'm hoping that whatever workout regimen he's going to whatever workout regimen he's been going through keeps him healthy, because that's a huge key. I think DeAndre Swift has a chance to be better than he was in the last couple of years, but health is key, and he's been injury prone.
But I just want to go on record as saying I was one of those ones who believed Jonathan Taylor was going to be an absolute beast at this level in the NFL. I was one of the ones who said this guy is an absolute talent. He's a stud. He's a run between the tackles. He's a guy who can get it outside and break it loose and get to the end zone. I was one of those guys. I just want the record to be shown. But all that being said, I agree with you 110%. There's no doubting who the more elite running back is on this team, and it's DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift does a ton of things really, really well, and he has the intangibles. He's got the speed. He's got the ability to catch the ball. He's got the ability to break tackles, to get away from guys and get open, get loose, and get down the field. All that being said, his big issue is just health. His body betrays him. It's another case where the Lions fall in love with a running back, and they tend to be injury prone. They don't make it a complete season. I do think you're right where he needs to get a Lions share of the carries or the touches, and no pun there. But he needs to get, like you said, 80+%, because he is such a dynamic running back. He can do so many different things. You can put him in the game, and you're not sure if it's going to be a pass out of the backfield. You're not sure if it's going to be a run. He gives you the ability to scheme different ways and to develop more plays. You have a much more wide open playbook when he's in the game. On top of that, at any point, he can bust it down the field and just turn what looked to be a 3-yard gain into a 30-yard gain and possibly score a touchdown. But you have to be able to use him in such a way where you're going to be able to keep him healthy, and you're going to be able to keep him basically safe for 17 games. I don't know if him touching the ball 80+% of the time is conducive to what his body is going to allow him to do. But I do think you're right. He's a guy that has to see the field more, has to touch the ball more, has to be much more involved. I think we both agree that if the Lions are going to take the field and every 4 snaps, he's got to touch the ball at least 3.5 times for those 4 snaps. He's got to at least be on the field for those 4 snaps. Like when Jamal Williams is in the game, I also want DeAndre Swift in the game. Now, I don't necessarily care who gets the ball in that situation, but I need DeAndre Swift out there because he poses a threat. He is forcing a linebacker. He's forcing a cornerback. He's forcing a safety to step up into the box and cover him or at least be aware of him. So what that does is that opens up things up on the flanks. So then you can get a wide receiver loose. You can create a gap in the middle of the coverage, and it opens up the playbook for passing, for passes. If anything, it forces another guy to maybe step away from the box to focus solely on DeAndre Swift. That way Jamal Williams can cut it up inside and pick up 5 yards instead of 3 yards. And I think we'd all be ecstatic if our running backs were picking up anywhere from 4 to 5 yards a carry. So I'm in lockstep with you. DeAndre Swift has to produce more. I would say this. I would go as bold to say DeAndre Swift needs to show more, and DeAndre Swift needs to be more integral in this offense and has to be healthy. If this team is going to have any success, if this team is going to give you your 8 wins that you're claiming that they have the ability to do, DeAndre Swift has to be a major factor in this offense for it to be able to produce that number of wins. Without DeAndre Swift, I think what you have is you've got a team that is now kind of stumbling and trying to figure out how to generate that offense from that position, right? Not necessarily saying that Jamal Williams can't give you any type of production, because we all know he can. You've seen what this team was able to do with a guy like Craig Reynolds last year. Craig Reynolds stepped in, had a hell of a game last season. And you also have Jamar Jefferson, who in your article, he says, is taking snaps away from a guy like Craig Reynolds, who was a really key piece to that offense, especially down the stretch last year. DeAndre Swift is so important to what this offense is trying to do, because he proposes the ability for passing and running downs, and he forces other guys to be accountable on the opposite line of scrimmage. He has to be an integral part, and he has to be on the field, and he has to touch the ball at a more regular clip. So I totally agree with you 110%.
Yeah, I just found it interesting that you typically don't hear coaches say, hey, I talked to my guy about kind of fighting through some things a little bit more. But you look at a player like DeAndre Swift and you realize, yeah, he's got an uphill climb, because obviously a player selected after him and Jonathan Taylor is really an all-world player, really could be on the verge of some superstardom and some great things in every down back, a guy that you can give the ball to just every single down. And magic can happen. Sit back and watch. But DeAndre Swift in this offense, I think, can be very successful. And I think that even though we may debate whether you believe in a 1 or 2 back system, I think if you complement DeAndre Swift with the thumper and Jamal Williams, now, is that the right player? I don't know. Jamal Williams maybe leaves a little bit of room to be desired in terms of his running ability and his ability to hit holes and break tackles, but he's a thumper. He can get a little bit of yards a little bit of yards after contact, and can be a little bit of that thumping type running back, and, you know, where that thunder and lightning type of run game. So I'm interested to see if Craig Reynolds takes a step forward, if Jamar Jefferson gets more in the mix. So the number 3 and 4 running backs will be very interesting to watch. But yeah, Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift have to be 1, 2 and lockstep, and they have to be on the field. And it's very, very important, very key. Is there another player that you believe is integral to this offense? Is it a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown? Is it TJ Hockenson? Because I could argue that TJ Hockenson, in his year now where he's potentially battling and fighting to negotiate for a long-term contract, if you're looking to ask general manager Brad Holmes and walk into his office and be like, pay me like Dallas Goedert, pay me like the likes of other high-end tight ends like George Kittle, Travis Kelce, and you realize, whoa, there are some players that are making north of $14 million as tight end. It's time to have that conversation, because Dan Campbell told reporters on Thursday, you know, in essence, we're not really wanting him to be Travis Kelce and George Kittle. We just want him to win the route, win the battles one-on-one, block well, do things well, win your assignment, and do just everything a little bit better. It was no real, you know, he kind of, you know, and I get it. You protect your players by kind of going, whoa, wait a minute. Being Travis Kelce is a huge ask. But when you look at it and you see other tight ends that TJ Hockenson has better stats than, you realize, well, I'm conflicted, because I don't want to pay TJ Hockenson $14 million a year, knowing that Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams and others, DJ Chark potentially, are going to be potentially looking at north of $10 million. I would rather allocate it towards a wide receiver. Am I wrong in talking about TJ Hockenson being that maybe other integral piece that maybe you pay, or you say, you know what, really focus your attention on the wideouts and taking care of the likes of St. Brown and DJ Chark.
I find it really interesting to hear what's coming out of Allen Park regarding TJ Hockenson. This is a guy who was drafted in the first round, eighth overall. This is a guy who you drafted to be Travis Kelce. This is a guy who you drafted to be Kittle. This is a guy who you drafted to be that piece that helps separate your offense from every other offense in the NFL and put you on a level with the likes of San Francisco when they're clicking, on the likes of the Kansas City Chiefs. This is a guy who you went out and you picked, not Brad Holmes, obviously, but that was drafted to basically be a game changer. And through 3 seasons, I really haven't seen it. I haven't seen what made him so special that he went 8th overall. I haven't seen it in 3 years. And really, really disappointed last year. Last year was supposed to basically be him taking that next step forward. I really feel like he took a step backwards. I think you're spot on. He is the guy. If you're picking a guy who has to take that next step in his evolution as a player, it's TJ Hockenson. Like, you have a wide receiver in DJ Chark who's going to help open things up. You've got a wide receiver in Amon-Ra St. Brown who can get open and get loose underneath and can do different things in the run game. All right? You need another big body who can go across the middle and catch the football and really become a safety valve for your quarterback in Jared Goff. You have to be able to present a lot more than just being able to go out there, win your routes, run a crisp route, and possibly getting open for a pass. No. I need you to go out there. I need you to dominate. Like, you have to go out there and you have to give me more than 67 receptions in a season. You've got to give me more than 700 yards a year. I need more from you. Do you realize this guy has yet to eclipse 7 touchdowns for the season? It's really sad when you look at where he was drafted and the production that you've gotten for him. You could almost make the claim that he's a bust. This guy is a bust. He was drafted 8th overall. You're expecting a ton of return on your investment at that pick, and we just haven't seen it yet. And look, I think TJ Hockenson has all the ability in the world to be a special player. It's going to be up to him to be able to go out and do it, to be able to go out and get it. And it'll be really interesting to see what happens this year, because, again, I thought last year he was going to take a monster step forward. I thought the way this offense was built, it really suited him. It really benefited him because they didn't have a wide receiver. They didn't have anybody of note. Amon-Ra St. Brown, going into the year, nobody expected anything from him. Nobody really knew what you had there. There were no wide receivers on this team that were a critical threat anywhere. It's set up for TJ Hockenson to be the number one option on offense. And maybe that was part of the problem. Maybe that forced defenses to really focus on him and hone in on him. And maybe that took away from his ability to be able to do things on the field. But I think you're right. TJ Hockenson needs to take that next step, and it needs to be this season. If you want that next payday, you want to be paid like some of the best in the league, you've got to show it on the field. And what he's given you so far, you can go out and you can get from a 5th round tight end. You can just go out, grab a guy, plug him in, and that's what you're going to get. If all it is just winning the routes and blocking and doing some of the finer details really, really good, if that's all that they're asking, there's no reason to pay this man that money. Save that money, go get yourself a wide receiver. Save that money, go get yourself a nice compliment to your running back. Save that money, possibly go find a quarterback who may become a free agent or trade for somebody. Save that money and reinvest it elsewhere if that's all you're asking him to do. All you're asking him to do and all you want him to do is to be able to win his route and to stay in and block well. Go find somebody else. There's no reason to pay him what he's going to be looking for. I would double down, and if that's the case, I would trade him because there's going to be a suitor out there.
Yeah,
there's going to be a suitor out there. I mean, everybody is looking for that next great tight end, right? Tight ends are basically the new fad. So like Travis Kelce, George Kittle, those guys, everybody's looking for that next guy. You know, Darren Waller, they're all looking for that next guy. He was supposed to be that next guy. Haven't seen it in 3 seasons. Not sure we get it this year. Now, again, this year, offense looks a little bit different. Got a few more options on the outsides. Again, we just got done talking about the run game and what we're expecting from a DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift takes that next level, that next step forward, and becomes that next level running back that we're looking for him to be. offensive line, obviously, we all think it's pretty good as long as it can stay healthy. Puts Jared Goff in a much better situation. It really should be a little bit easier for him then, because now you've got other eyes elsewhere along this offense. He should be able to get open, should really be able to perform. If he does not perform, if we get something similar to what we got in 2020, I trade his ass. Get rid of him. Get him out of here. You're not paying this guy to basically be a 65 reception, 700 yard type of guy. You're paying him for more. You want him to be closer to what Kittle and what Kelsey are. You want him to be closer to a 1,000-yard receiver and a guy who shows up big in the red zone and gets you anywhere from 7 to 12 touchdowns. He hasn't eclipsed. His ceiling so far is 6. So I need him to take that next step in his development and his growth. If I don't get it this year, I'm looking to move on from him because I'm not willing to pay for this. So I think you're absolutely right.
Yes. And this Lions talk is exciting. Just 1 week ahead of mandatory minicamp, where Detroit Sports Podcast, All Lions, will be on hand to watch Aiden Hutchinson take on Penei Sewell, Aiden Hutchinson take on Taylor Decker, Aiden Hutchinson take on the likes of Jonah Jackson. It'll be a fun time. We'll get a more in-depth look at minicamp, at Jared Goff, Tim Boyle, DeAndre Swift, the likes of how fast DJ Chark is. How does the young cats develop in regards to Kirby Joseph and the others as well? So this Lions talk, so exciting as we hit. Listen, OTAs are good. You get some initial looks at some things, but mandatory minicamp gives you a full roster look and an opportunity to really look at practice from a different perspective. So make sure you stay tuned to Detroit Sports Podcast. Anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast, type in Detroit Sports Podcast and our content will find you. Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. If you've agreed or you have a different take on TJ Hockenson, if you think he is the focal point and you got to pay him $15 million per, hit us up at Detroit Podcast. We'll engage in the debate. Cuz thank you so much for being patient. Hit the OTA trail, and you got me here to record this podcast. But anytime we can take a closer look at what will make the Lions successful, it's well worth it. And basically, it's like a Memorial Day podcast. Look, we were at the pool, we're hanging out. We bring you a lighter version because everyone's recovering. Everybody had their drinks, they had their time in the pool, they had their barbecues, and now it's time to relax, enjoy this podcast. Quick hitter this week, but next week we'll go full bore and give you what we saw the first couple days of OTAs. And here come the Tigers. Something interesting to look at. The Tigers played really well this week, so we'll see if that continues moving forward as they hit the road to face the Yankees. Cuz, thank you so much. Love recording the latest edition of the Detroit Sports Podcast. You've just downloaded and listened to Doc and Jock.